pleasure to welcome Foyle-Štšura Duo today. Maksim Stsura is a pianist and Michael Foyle is a violinist. Their career took over after they won 2 competitions in 2015. And today they are presenting their debut CD. Michael and Maksim, so tell me a little bit about the CD. You are recording W.Lutoslawski and K.Penderecki's works for violin and piano. How did you come up with this idea?
Well, Olga, it just so happens that the complete violin and piano works by the 2 great Polish and European and universal composers of the 20th century, K.Penderecki and W.Lutoslawski, can be put on one CD. And they just fit so wonderfully. And of course, we can then look at the ways these 2 composers were different in their careers, all the things that they've done differently and all the things they might have had some similarities in. And it opens up a lot of possibilities for communication, interaction, and we're very pleased to be doing this project. And amazingly, we just felt that it's working.
Yeah, and also equally amazingly, the first piece that we had to rehearse was the Lutoslawski Partita, because it was the centenary of Lutoslawski that year. It was
Absolutely.
2012. Philharmonia organized an event called Woven Words. So that was the first piece we played,
Yep.
and we made it through it, and then we said, okay, well that's fine, let's play Brahms. And the rest of the day we played Brahms, and that's how it started.
But basically, the fact that we can rehearse a piece such as Lutoslawski Partita, played for about 5 years in a row and not really get bored of it,
Yeah, well, it's
that
great
probably
music.
means it's great music.
It is great music.
Indeed, Lutoslawski's Partita is one of the finest duo works in the 20th century.
Yeah, possibly of all time.
Maybe of all
Yeah.
time, yes, but
Yes, sir.
definitely...
What makes it great, do you think?
Well, first of all, it's like, I remember one of my teachers in Germany, actually, once said, Peter Michael Hamel, who you actually introduced me to, wonderful guy. So he had this wonderful description of Lutoslawski. He said Lutoslawski is one of those composers who has Kopf und Bauch,
Yeah.
so head and stomach, or guts or something. So that basically means that this music is not just marvelously structured, but it also has the most sincere and very intense emotion, which makes for a wonderful and a communicative contemporary music piece.
Absolutely. The colleagues that we've spoken to who've worked with him, because he used to come to London quite a lot, said he was always incredibly smart, incredibly dapper, never lost his temper, very polite, a real gentleman, but this incredible intellect. I mean, he studied mathematics and violin, and he gave them both up. But they were still, those things were still very much part of his upbringing. And then, of course, piano and composition. Penderecki is a more, let's say, intuitive, more emotional. He draws on the influence of Shostakovich, with whom he was very close. And it's a more... He said he saved himself from the avant-garde by going back to the tradition.
And interestingly, Lutoslawski never forgave. They were friends, but when Penderecki went back to composing basically tonal music, Lutoslawski never really understood that, because Lutoslawski was all for music of the future, music of the avant-garde, ahead of the time.
He was very ahead of the time.
Yeah.
And this aleatory qualities where the performer should almost make it up as they go along. He writes it, I think he called it limited aleatorism.
Yeah, it's...
where it's sort of specified, but you can play in any time that you want, as long as you start and finish at the same time. I think Penderecki now has gone so far in the other direction.
Well, he went back into, maybe this is what he thinks postmodernism is.
Tell us a little bit about what it is like to be dealing with a living composer.
Penderecki himself was extremely warm, very generous. We were pushing him for feedback. Please tell us something that we can improve. And the one comment after all of this was, more pesante. So that's what I remember about Penderecki.
For those listeners and those fans of yours who've never heard of those composers, how would they introduce themselves to their music?
You should think of it like a book. that you open the book, and from the book you expect a good beginning, you expect some kind of story that you follow, and if you can persevere with it, then you expect an ending, and it's going to be worth it to keep going. And I think it should be the same with music. Like, you sit down and you trust that it's going to give you something.
You've mentioned that there is a lot of communication going on. So first of all, the so-called triangle between the soloist, the composer and the audience. But there's one extra element to that, because you also communicate between each other. And I'm sure that it's not always a pleasant and positive experience. Sometimes you disagree on certain things. So how do you deal with this problem?
It's how much do you pursue your own artistic ideals to the extent that you're going to cause a conflict in a concert. That's why I feel lucky with Maksim. It's someone I found that basically shares the same artistic values and ideals, even though we have different backgrounds and different schools. Yeah, there is still.
And this what makes you a duo, not a violinist and a componist. Is
I think so. I think it's like any partnership. There has to be an element of unification and an element of
diversification.
Yes, or tension even. You know, that there's a little bit this in order to find this, and it will always be exciting. If
Very,
it's two people,
very dialectic. Very dialectic.
Yeah.
So, in terms of the professional musical relationship, what have you learned from each other? Because you've mentioned the different backgrounds and different school. How did you benefit from this difference?
I think he learned about Lagavulin and I learned about Morosha.
Yes, no, well, I always respect Michael, and I feel very privileged to be working with him, because I know that in every rehearsal he will have some kind of amazing new idea, and I feel that every time we rehearse together there is something very exciting happening, and there are some very interesting musical trends that we can perceive in those processes. So I think it's a wonderful thing to be doing, really. And but then of course also things you play in different venues, in different countries, on different continents, and you meet also different audience. And I think if you go to different country, you play differently to different audience, and there is always something to learn. You learn from each other in ensemble. You also learn from your audience. Of course, you learn from your teachers, and you're grateful to them for what you learn from them. And it's just constant learning, really.
So, how would a listener benefit from listening to this CD?
It's not just about happy communication. It's also about the hardship of the 20th century. And of course, we know that the 70 years of the Soviet bloc wasn't exactly the most fruitful environment for composers to thrive and to come up with brand new ideas. And in fact, they were subject to all sorts of censorship and critique. So I think this music has a lot to say, and we'd like to think that we are really giving it our best ideas and best thoughts. So I think it's an interesting experience.
And great music that they might not already have 200 recordings of.
Yeah.
I think it's not only the great music, but it's also great musicians. Thank you very much for your attention.